Someone once told you that you have no personality. Maybe it was a coworker, a classmate. Maybe it was said as a joke, half laughing, while you stood there and said nothing, which, of course, only proved their point. You smiled. You let it go. And later, alone, you turned it over in your mind like a stone in your pocket, wondering if they were right. They weren't. But here's what's interesting. The fact that you wondered, that's the whole story. You're in a room full of people. Someone asks the group a question. Hands go up. Voices overlap. People are talking over each other, laughing, building on each other's sentences. You have an answer. A good one, actually. You've already thought it through 3 different ways. But by the time it feels ready to say out loud, by the time it's the right answer and not just a first instinct, the conversation has moved on. And you sit there holding something that nobody asked for anymore. This happens a lot. At work, at dinner, in the car with people you've known for years. And from the outside, it looks like you have nothing to say. But inside, there's a whole other conversation going on. One that never quite makes it to the surface. Here's what most people get wrong about quiet people. They assume the silence is empty. That not talking about yourself means there's nothing there, no strong opinions, no rich inner life, no burning need to be known. The loud assumption is that self-expression and self-worth travel together, that people who share freely must have more to share. But psychology keeps finding something different. The people who talk least about themselves are often the ones processing the most. Not performing it, not advertising it, just holding it. And the question worth asking isn't why they don't talk more. It's why talking about themselves, specifically, feels like something that requires permission they were never quite given. Brain imaging research has shown that introverts, people who orient inward rather than outward, tend to have more activity in the frontal lobes, the region associated with internal processing, planning, and deliberation. This isn't a deficiency. It's a different architecture. Where an extrovert's brain moves quickly toward external reward, an introvert's brain tends to pause, run the simulation internally, check it twice, then decide whether to speak. The result is someone who almost never says something they don't mean. But it also means they carry a lot of things they never say at all. Psychologist Martin Seligman described a concept called learned helplessness. The pattern that emerges when someone stops trying after repeated experiences of not being heard. It was originally studied in animals, but researchers have since found it everywhere in human behavior. When a child speaks and is talked over, dismissed, or mocked often enough, the brain begins to register an equation. Expression leads to pain. And so it stops. Not as a choice. As a conclusion. Many people who rarely talk about themselves didn't start that way. One comment from someone who'd watched this kind of video put it plainly. My silence was born in childhood. When I began to open up, I seemed to annoy others. So I decided to stay quiet unless spoken to, and often felt forgotten altogether. That's not introversion. That's adaptation. The distinction matters because it changes what silence actually is. For some people, quiet is temperament, a genuine preference for depth over volume, for listening over performing. For others, quiet is armor, grown from years of learning that what's inside them is not particularly welcome in the room. Often, it's both. But here's the part that's harder to sit with. The same qualities that make quiet people so perceptive, the careful observation, the deep processing, the reluctance to speak before they're sure, can also trap them. Because you see everything. You notice when someone's tone shifts. You catch the subtext in a conversation 3 exchanges before anyone else does. You read the room without trying. But reading a room and being in a room are different things. And spending years in the observer position has a cost. People learn not to ask you. They stop wondering what you think because you never seem to volunteer it. Over time, your silence becomes part of how others define you, and part of how you define yourself. One person described it this way. The problem is, when I think deeply, it isolates me both in my own mind and the world around you. That sentence lands differently the longer you sit with it. Depth without a way out becomes its own kind of loneliness. There's also a particular unfairness that quiet people carry, almost universally. Being quiet is often misread as arrogance, as coldness, as indifference, as stupidity. Someone in a comment said it with the exact right amount of exhaustion. "I'm very quiet, and people I've worked around did not like it." One time somebody said, "My brother is quiet too. Y'all just have no personality." I realized you can tell how dumb somebody is by how they react to quiet people. That flicker of dry humor, that's the whole inner world they assumed wasn't there. And there's something else worth naming. Quiet people are often the ones other people talk to most freely, precisely because they listen so well. They become the container for everyone else's stories, everyone else's feelings, everyone else's need to be heard. They're the friend people call at midnight, the coworker who everyone vents to, the one who remembers details nobody else bothered to hold. That's real. That matters. But it can also slowly hollow something out when the listening is never returned. When the same people who pour into you have no idea what's actually going on inside you. Not because they don't care, but because you never told them. Because you answered "I'm fine" so fluently for so long that it became the only answer anyone thought to expect. While there's a certain kind of person who ends up at a video like this, not because they're looking for validation exactly, but because they've spent enough time being misread that they've started to wonder if the misreading is correct. If that's you, it's not. The fact that you don't talk about yourself constantly doesn't mean you have nothing to offer. It means you take words seriously. It means you've thought about what it costs to say something and get it wrong, and you'd rather stay quiet than say the wrong thing. That's not a flaw, it's a standard. A high one, maybe uncomfortably high. But yours. What's worth noticing, though, is the difference between choosing quiet and hiding in it. There's a version of silence that's power, deliberate, grounded, comfortable in itself. And there's a version that's just old fear wearing the same face. One comes from knowing yourself. The other comes from deciding, somewhere along the way, that knowing yourself was private property nobody else had rights to. You don't have to announce everything you feel. You don't have to become someone who fills every silence or performs their interiority for a room that didn't earn it. But every once in a while, with the right person in the right moment, letting yourself be known is not a risk. It's the whole point. You were never empty. You were just waiting for proof that it was safe to show up. It is.